Good evening, well, afternoon really. Welcome to the Canadian Orthodox Monastery. And I've been asked by a few people to give a little bit of a tour of the monastery while we were giving these presentations. So I'm going to broadcast from a different place each time and have a little bit of a different backdrop. And we'll see how we can go around all parts of the monastery at different times and try to download videos that show all parts of it. I was also asked to discuss the Ten Commandments a little, and so I'm going to go back to that. And of course this is part of the Old Testament is about you, but we hadn't discussed the Ten Commandments in detail at the beginning, so we'll look at them a little now. And I'm looking at a Hebrew Bible now, not one of the Protestant, Roman Catholic, or Orthodox translations, but actually at a Hebrew Bible. And we'll compare some of these things with the Septuagint, which is the most authentic translation into Greek of the Old Testament, and then the Septuagint as it's translated into English. And here are the Ten Commandments from this Hebrew version in English. God spoke all these words, saying, I am Yahweh, your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt from a house of serfs. You are not to have any other gods before my presence. You are not to make for yourselves any carved image of anything that is in the heavens above, that is on the earth beneath, that is in the waters beneath the earth. You are not to bow down to them, you are not to serve them, for I, Yahweh your God, am a zealous God. Now notice it does not say a jealous God here, but a zealous God. The word in the Hebrew is ka'anah, which is to mean a zealot, or one who is zealous. And so it also doesn't say that he's zealous of his honor, simply that he's a zealous God. And he calls to account the iniquities of all, to the third and fourth generation, by showing loyalty to the thousandth of those that love me, of those that keep my commandments. Ye are not to take up the name of Yahweh your God for emptiness, that is in vain. For Yahweh will not clear him that takes up his name for emptiness. Remember the Sabbath day to hallow it. For 6 days you are to serve, and are to make all your work. But the seventh day is Sabbath for Yahweh your God. You are not to make any kind of work, no, nor your sons, nor your daughters, nor your servants, nor your maid, nor your beast, nor your sojourner who is within your gates. And this is interesting because later our Lord Jesus Christ will say the Sabbath was made for man and not man for the Sabbath. Now it's not simply a commemoration of the 6 eons of creation, because our Lord Jesus Christ fulfilled the perfect Sabbath in the tomb. And he said that the Sabbath is made for man and not man for the Sabbath. This really is a gift from God, the Sabbath. As some people have made a fetish out of it, others a dogma or a doctrine. And yet, because they did not understand the words of Christ, you notice that servants, this includes slaves, none of them are to be working on the Sabbath. If it were not for the gift of the Sabbath, the servants, slaves, those who were hired hands, would have had to work 7 days a week with no rest, and who knows how many hours. In Britain at the turn of the 20th century, many people were working as many as 16 hours a day. They had absolutely no days off, not even Sundays, and there were no national holidays upon which people had rest. But our Lord Jesus Christ had commanded that all should have rest 1 day a week. And we understand that the body actually needs this day of rest, and our mind also needs this day of rest, because if we didn't take it, we would become totally exhausted, and mentally exhausted as well. So this is really a gift from God. And we should think of it not in the way some people do, as a juridical law. I know some people who insist on having their church services on the seventh day because of this Old Testament law, and not realizing that Christ rose on the first day of the week, whereby we celebrate the divine liturgy, which is really the celebration of his resurrection on the day in which the event took place, the first day of the week. And we're not bound by this Old Testament law, but we are to keep one day of the week set aside for glorification of God and for rest and recreation as well. So the next one is honor your father and mother, in order that it may be well with you and your days may be prolonged on the soil that Yahweh your God is giving you. And our Lord Jesus Christ will quote that one again, the first commandment with promise. It's also the law that lets us know that the King James Version has given us a wrong translation of the wedding of Cana. And the law does not say you're not to kill, but you're not to commit murder. This is important in a way because a lot of killing would take place in defense or even in conquering the Holy Land, again, conquering Palestine or Canaan. And so the Jews would have understood that they could not commit murder. And I think they tended to apply that only to other Jews. You're not to murder another Hebrew. But in any case, we'll see how quickly this law was broken, whichever understanding you have of it. And you're not to be an adulterer. Well, that's easily understood. And you're not to steal, nor to testify against your fellow as a false witness. Now at this point, because we have such a short time for the broadcasts, at this point I want to point out that these laws could be fulfilled in a juridical way, and it would not have any real spiritual value. It would be good for the tribe, for the Hebrews, for the nation. It would be more peaceful within the nation if all these laws were fulfilled. But if they were fulfilled only from fear of punishment, they would have no intrinsic spiritual value. All of these laws could be fulfilled from unselfish love, in which case they would have great spiritual value, and they would be something that would give new spiritual birth to the people who are following and obeying them. You shall not desire the house of your neighbor, nor his wife, nor his servant, nor his maid, nor his ox, nor anything that is your neighbor's. Now, this is extremely important as a commandment. This is the last commandment and the longest one. And you see that not to desire what your neighbor has really can only be fulfilled if you have an unselfish love for your neighbor. Again, we come back to the same point, unselfish love. And this is the essence of the Ten Commandments and the essence of the law. All these things should be fulfilled from unselfish love, and not simply from some kind of a fear of punishment. So we want to bear that in mind, and remember that when we come to start filling the commandments, moralists and moralism would tell us that we're to fulfill them out of fear of punishment. But true morality will tell us that we're to fulfill them out of co-suffering love for our neighbor and a desire not to cause pain or hurt or sorrow or grief to anyone else, and not to try to take, or by defraudment or deceit, anything which does not belong to us. Now I'm going to try to aim the camera around a little bit and give an idea of what the backdrop of the monastery looks like here. And in future we'll try to make our recordings from different places around the monastery, and we'll gradually give you a tour of the monastery. So thank you for joining us, and God bless you, and we'll continue a little later with our broadcast.